Hi, today I'll be writing an expenses application from scratch. What my intent is to show how this responsive application will show both in a mobile device, and in this case I'll be using the OutSystems Now shell to get to the applications. So here I have 8 applications. We'll be adding one application to this, and then we'll also show how the application works in a browser. So let's go at it. I'm going to be in Service Studio, and I'm going to add a new application here, and I'm going to let's call it Expenses, and I'm going to change the icon to something that could make sense. For example, let's pick a good one. Yeah, let's go with this guy. Expenses. I hit save. I'm going to use a template I like Liverpool because the tabs are on the top, but everything is very customizable. You can change the colors and everything. So here we are in the studio. There's not much going on. There's an empty screen here. So we come to the entities, and a fast way of starting an entity is just to use an Excel spreadsheet with some default columns that we may want to use. I also would like to see pictures here, like let's say a picture of the place we're going to, but that's a pattern that you might see in many applications. So I'm going to use the scaffolding way to bring an image when you want to have a one-to-one correlation, but of course you can have many pictures to one, and I'll show you how to do that later. But let's go at it. Let's say I add a screen for all the expenses and another screen where you can edit an expense. So if we look at what I created here, I have a list of all the expenses. Let's also add the picture here. Let's say I don't want to show the email, so let's take this column out. That's good enough. So let's publish this. So we created 2 screens. And these screens have variables and actions. And right now, what's going on is it's compiling to the right environment, which could be .NET or Java, but in my case, it's .NET. It's compiling the application, creating the necessary changes to the underlying database, and it says it's done. It's also creating versions for us. But anyway, let's go check it out. If I come to my tablet here, I'm going to log out and I log in. I see that I have a new expenses app, and I'm going to go at the expenses, and we see that we have expenses. We see that this is by default already responsive. In that if I hit the key on the right, I can see my data this way. If I went to a browser, it's me see the same application in a browser, I have enough real estate to show this with the whole width of the screen. Let's just take a picture in the tablet, because the tablet allows me to do that. So I'm going to go to Classes in Atlanta, and you see we have the picture there, the ability to change the picture. I'm going to hit the Change Picture. Let's see if I can press right. OutSystems Now, this shell is using Cordova plugins, and it notices that I'm using OutSystems Now, so it allows me to do native things like taking a picture. Let's say that this is what Atlanta looks like. It's really my backyard. I'm going to hit Use Photo. Let's say that that's the picture that we want to associate to this record. And I'm going to press Upload. And this picture gets uploaded to the server. And I hit Save. And that should place it in the list. If I go to my browser and I refresh my browser, I see that the picture has been updated. But now let's let's make some more changes to this. Let's say, for example, that that somebody wants to enter some feedback. We have a very interesting app called the feedback application where people who you allow to request changes to an application. So let's use it. I'm going to come to this feedback application as the admin, and I'm going to go and configure the applications that I want to turn this on for, and I'm going to be looking for that expenses app to turn it on to. And let's see, I have expenses now. Remember, if I'm in the if I'm here in my tablet, this is what I see in the bottom. But look what happens when I turn this on here. It says it turns on the feedback for the expenses app, and you can determine what users, what roles get it. So you have a lot of granularity there. But let's check out the world of the mobile here. Let me get out and come back into this application, and we see that we have now this bubble that allows me to go to a record, for example, and let's say that I wanted to add a map here so I can illustrate where I want the change and even speak my change so that some developer can make this change for me. And I press done, and I send my message to the back end. So it's a great way of communicating feedback and changes and requests to a back end, and in that way you're eliminating all the phone tagging and voicemails and emails back and forth. So I see I have expenses here, and I see that now I have a new instance that just arrived from this user, and I get all kinds of information about the device that this person is using, and I see exactly what they want. Even speak my change so that some developer can make this change. So I can, it's very clear. And if I hit this, I would go back to the application and make my change. But let me close this window here, and I don't need this window anymore. And let's go back to my application here. So let's make that change. Let's add a Google map to the application. Actually, we want to put it in this in here. The platform comes with all kinds of all these components in the Forge, and one of them is the Google Map component. I already have it installed, which is 2 or 3 clicks after this, but I already have it installed in my environment. So what I can do is I can come here and see everything that is installed in my platform, in my environment. And notice that here there's nothing that has anything about Google Maps. But I'm going to come here and look for Google, which is the component that I just brought in, and I see I have Google Maps, and I'm going to bring in the address map and say OK. So that brings all the coding here. So now I have this new widget that I can add to here. So I'm going to bring the address map here. Now before I do, notice the green button on the top. That's technology we call True Change that supervises everything I'm doing, making sure that it all makes sense. Once I drop the map, it complains because it requires, it sees some dissonance here, and it sees that it requires an address. This map requires an address. That's what this error is telling me. This API requires a parameter. If I go in here, I can go into the expression editor where I have access to many functions, but one of the things I have is access to the data that's coming in. I see that I have an address, so I can put the address in there, and now I will have an address to supply to the map. So I'm back to green, which is good. I don't like the placement, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click here and enclose this in a container, which in CSS terms is a div. And now the platform with those rails there, it shows me how fat this map can be to fit perfectly where I want it to fit. And of course I could see how things are going to look like in a browser, in a tablet, and in a phone. So I can be very proactive about how my applications will look. I don't have to wait for publishing the application to see how things look. Let's give it a go and see that change take place. So once again, now, besides compiling, I'm creating versions, so I can go back to a previous version of this app if need be. And it's making any unnecessary changes to the database. It says it's done. Let's just, for speed-wise, let's just show it in a browser. This time, it's bringing up. So let's see, if I go to class in Atlanta, I should have a map of Atlanta here. So let's see, if I go back, let's see, I have Waltham here. This is showing, should show Waltham. That's where I'm located, actually. It's actually, I'm located more over here, so let's change the address. Let's give it a little bit more. Cedarwood Avenue. And now you all know where I live now. And I'm gonna come here, and that's really where I am located. So okay, let's go ahead and make some more changes to the app. Let's say that we wanted to have some items, some expense receipts added to this. Also, we want to have some sort of a code added to this application as well. How would we do this? So let's see. It all has to do with data. So the first thing we want to do, let's say we wanted to add items to this. I would create a new entity, item, and let's say that in the item table, I would add maybe a description, and let's see what else, maybe a cost. Let's see, cost, and the cost, let's make this a numeric. So let's make it decimals, fine. And let's say we also wanted to have pictures for the items. So I'm gonna do the same thing I did before, where I import the default picture to have as a placeholder. And what does my organization look like? Well, so far we don't have a connection between the expense and the item. So what I want to do is I want to say that an item belongs to an expense ID. We do an expense. So this is a foreign key that I just created. Let's also create a code for the expense. So I'm going to create an entity, a static entity, because these are something that is very fixed. So let's create records. Let's say we have we create a record code. Let's say code A, and we add a record B, and we let's say we add a record C. So we have three codes, and we want to the expenses to have those codes in there. So if I come to my display, to my expense detail, I need a way to allow the user to enter those codes. So I can just come here and add this to my screen. So that's good. Let's also create a way that I can add items. So I have some room here. So I'm going to grab the items and drop them here. And what the platform gives me is a cross, a way to group all the items that belong to this item, to this expense. I see I have the ability to enter a new item, and I have this widget that will create a pop-up editor. But I also want to add it to I want to allow not just to do new items and delete items. I'd like to also be able to edit an item. So I want to convert this to do the same thing as here. So what do? I'm gonna click on it. I'm gonna right-click and make this a link to that pop-up editor. And once I do that, the platform complains that I need to supply some information as parameters to that pop-up. For example, an item ID and an expense ID. So now it has everything it needs. I also want to give this link here. I want to give it a name, like edit, and I'm going to use that because when I want to copy this widget, and I'll put it anywhere, but I need to tell this web block, this widget to know where to go or when to come alive, and it needs to have a relationship with this link which I named before. So here I can point to that link that I named, and this should be an edit item. So we made two changes. Let's see how things look in the runtime environment, which in this case is my development environment. So once again, I'm creating a new version. I compile. I'm packaging all the HTML, the CSS, the JavaScript that comes with the application, and it's ready to go. So let's go to the browser, and when I click, it already knows there's a new version, so it's going to bring that new version here. So now let's say I have a meeting with a client here, and here let me change the picture here to something that's more like Boston. So let's see, do I have a picture of Boston? Yes, I do. And I upload. Now this is a browser, so the browser can only pick up pictures from my file system. And I have items. So let's add some items. So I have a new pop-up here, and I'm gonna call this. Let's say I had a meal, and it cost me $100, and I hit save, and I'm gonna put another item. I don't know, let's say that I had to fly somewhere, airplane, and this was a little bit more expensive, 300, and hit save. Let's change the receipts here for the airplane. Let's say I pick a picture. I could take a picture of the receipt, or expenses. Here we have a plane. Let's say that was my receipt of my flight, and let's say in the meal, I come in here and I have to change that default picture. Okay, here we go. So let's say that that's the receipt, and I upload it and I save. So now I have those two receipts. Also, I see those codes, so I can save. And we forgot to put a column where we can see codes. So let's do that. Let's say that I have codes for all of this. Let's change this to B. I can change this one to a code C, and then I have and this one is also a C, and I hit save, and let's make sure I have a code here. And of course we could have made this fields required, which I will also change. Let's do that. Let's say that when I go to an expense detail, we need to make this from now on. We're going to make it mandatory so we don't forget in the future. Let's also say that there is an option of, well, in this case it doesn't, we'll leave it like that, but they have to put something where what we want to do is create a filter in the expenses. We want to show the codes, so I need to first of all show it here. So I come here and I'm going to create a column right about there. Although you can move the columns around if I want to move the date over here. So now we have the code here. But let's say I wanted to only list those codes that are, I want to specify the code. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab one of these widgets here, a combo box, place it here. And now the combo box needs to know, well, what are you going to be using for the record list? So I don't, the list of possibilities. Here I only have an expenses list. So what I have to do is I have to go to, in this expenses screen, I have an opportunity before the expenses place. Preparation is everything that happens before. That's why it's only finding one. But if I grab from my data, I grab my codes, I can grab the codes here. So now I have where I can pick from. And the other thing I need is I need a place to store that code. So I'm going to create a local variable, and I'm going to call it code ID, and from the name it figures the right type. So I have what I need to supply to this widget. First of all, the source record list is that a codes list. What attribute? What am I showing? I'm going to show the label. And where am I placing it? I'm placing it in this variable. So now I have something to place it to. Now in here, I may also want to allow for the possibility for all. So I'm going to say that if they enter all, it's going to pass a 0 back to the application. And well, now I have to tell the SQL that I have to set up some sort of a filter. So I do that in the preparation. I'm going after all the expenses. So in here is where I could add a filter. And I'm going to add a filter, and the filter will be if the code ID is equal to my variable code ID, or I have to allow for the possibility that the code ID is equal to nothing, which means that it's all. So so that's all good. Let's publish this to the runtime. Alrighty, so let's see how things look. I'm going to close this, and I see that I have a code. I see I forgot to put a code for this one here. So I'm going to come to hosting, and if I wanted to save this, now this is required, so it won't let me get away with not putting a code here. And I'm going to hit save. So now we have all the codes. Let's look for only the A's. And now I have only the A's, only the B's. I only have one B. And let's go back to all. So now that's working. Now what if we wanted to get some data, use some other data to populate our records, like maybe data that comes from an API. So what I have here, let me show you an API that I've already created. So I have an API that goes against the database and gets me all of these different codes. Let me grab the URL or the way to code the API, and I come to the platform, and I need to consume a REST API in this case, and bring in that, and I have to give it a sample of what the output looks like. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to copy that and paste it here, and I press OK. So now I have a way to get all those codes, but I'm gonna create an action so that I can more directly take advantage of this. So I'm gonna add an action, and the action will be called types. And in here, I'm gonna send back. Send back a list, and I'm gonna call this list. If I call it get expenses responses. When I do that, because of the way I named it, it matches. It knows that the type that I need. And I could have also changed it if I needed to. But so this is going to be a function. So I need to make it be a function. You'll see later how useful that is. So what is this function doing? Not much yet. It's going to call this method. So now I need to get the assign this output to this. So I'm going to bring in an assignment. I tell it that this is going to be the target, and what I want is the response of this call here. So now I have this available to me. This is a function, so I can use it. So let's use it in the expense detail. In here we have a type. This is now an entry field, but I want to change it. I want to make it also be one of its combo boxes. So I'm going to make some room here. I'm going to move the combo box here. And where am I getting my data from? In the source record list, I can go to user functions. This is where I like this, that they get exposed here. The source attribute, let's say that I'm gonna use both the name. I'm gonna use the name of the expense in all of this. Now the output here, where is it going to be placed? I'm going to place it in the expense type. And the platform complains because I have a place to store that already. So I don't need this variable anymore, so I'm going to delete that. So now this comes here. Now this guy, this label is pointing to an input widget, which is this, and I took that one away. So I need, if I call this the same as the other one, as the one that I just deleted, then the platform will be happy, and it is. So now I'm going to be able to enter expense types that come from that outside API, and let's also show them when we show the expenses. I'm going to add that column to my report. So let's move it like, where would it make sense? Let's put it right here, and I'm going to publish. So let's see what we got. Right, we don't have any types here yet. Let's put some. I go to class in Atlanta, and we don't have one for education. For now, I'm gonna just put airfare to see that it works. But let's add education to those types. So I'm gonna go to my. This is in an outside database. So I'm looking for my SQL developer, and here I'm looking at an outside database. So I want to add a type that wasn't there before. I go to tables, and I have expenses, and I come to my data. And let's look at the data here. So I see that I don't have expenses. Remember now, if I'm looking at my APIs, there's no expenses. Let's make the code 110. So if I come here and I add an expense of 110, education, that's too many ones. Let's make it like that, and let's commit the transaction. So I have education. It went out right on top. If I come here and I refresh, I see that I have a new one. Cool. So now if I come to my application here, and I'm gonna refresh my application, let's change the class to Atlanta, and where's the type? Let's pick education. Now we have one. Great. And then we have other ones. Let's go for, what is this, parking? No, let's say parking. So now we just added another type. So now let's create a status. Let's say this expense has a status associated to it. So once again, we come to the data. We need a static entity that has statuses, status. And let's say we have in the status, we have we're gonna add a record, one that says in progress, and then we're gonna add another record that is approved, and let's create another record that says rejected, for example. And we need those statuses to be parts of the expense. So let me get some real estate here, and we come here like that, and I throw the status right on top of the expense. Okay, so I have a status ID, and let's show it on in the report. So we got that. Now we don't need it. We really don't need it in the detail. We don't need it because people don't change the status, but the system should change the status. So when someone presses save, they come here. We need to set the status to a default status. Let me get some room here. Well, actually, I want the room right before we do the update here. I'm going to create an assignment here, and what am I assigning? My target will be, we're going to be entering that on behalf of the user. We're going to be entering the status ID. And my source will be in the entities. I'm going to be grabbing the status, which is in progress. So that will be, whenever we create something, it's going to go there. But I want somebody with more of an administration type of role to be able to approve. So I'm going to put in another button here, and the button will say approve, and the destination, right now it's complaining because this button doesn't have a place to go. A button can go to a URL or what have you, but in this case we want it to go to a specific action. So I'm gonna, if I double click here, it creates an action. And what is it that we want to do? We want to set that field. And I could do the same thing as before, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to steal some code here. I'm going to copy this and go to the approve and paste it here. But of course I want to change the status to, if they go here, it will be approved. And of course we could have another button for reject. But now I need to write it to the database, right? So I have to come to the expense and do a create or update. It needs to know where am I updating from. It's this record that I am working with. Now, of course, we don't want an employee to approve his or her expenses. So this button needs to have some logic where it either we could set these fields to be visible or enabled depending on who the user is. We could also enclose this in an if. It depends how you want to do it. But in any case, we need to really have another role to do that. So I come to logic and I'm going to add a role of manager. So I have a role of manager. And now in this button, let's say I want to make it, I'm going to make it visible, but I'm not going to make it enable unless someone has that role. So I'm going to double click on the enable, and instead of just passing it through blindly, I'm going to use this function here to check that this person that I signed on has the role of manager. All right, so we are set to go here, and I'm going to publish. We go back to the application. Now the user I've been signing on to is an admin user, so they get all the roles, but not until I log off. So before when I log in, when I go into this screen, I'm still going to have the old roles, which are disabled. So I cannot hit approve here. Nothing happens. But if I hit save, it takes the default, which shows in progress. Let's do that again. If I go to this record here and I hit save, that shows in progress. But how do I approve? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to log off, and then I'm going to log back on. And once I do that, because I'm already an admin, it's going to inherit all those roles. So if let's say I come here, now my approve is enabled, so I can approve it. And I could send an email notification and so on and so forth. But if I come back here, now this one is approved. Now where do you change roles? You would want to go to an application that comes with the environment called users. And in here, you can control users. So for example, if I search for a user called test, I see I only have these roles, but if I wanted to add that new role, I know I have an expense app, so I start typing it, and this is how easy I could add a role to that user. Okay, now let's finish this with a little bit more business logic. After we approve, we probably want to send a notification. So what I can do is I could send an email. So I'm going to put an email here, and it's saying, who do I want to send to? So I can look in here, And part of what I have in that preparation that gets me the expense is an expense record, and the user has an email, so I can use that email. And now here it's asking for an email template, which I don't have, but I can create one. So I'm going to create a new email, and now I'm going to go into the main flow and work with this this email that I created. I could have also dragged and dropped it here, but I can call it whatever. My let's say approve notification, and the subject, let's say your expense has been approved. And an email behaves a lot like a screen. I could be passing a variable to this. For example, maybe I want to pass the expense ID, because if I have the expense ID, I could set up a preparation where I get information about that expense ID. So once I go into the email, I could do anything I want to here. For example, I could maybe put an image here. I'm going to put an image here, and I'm going to import an image. And let's see, I have a nice OutSystems logo. That's a little bit too big, but we can change it. Let's say what I can do in a container. This is why I like to use containers. Is that I put the image inside the container. So what I can do is I can use alignment. So maybe I want to align this to the right, and I can modify the width and the height and everything. Let's say that I want the height to be about let's make it 70 pixels. So that's not so bad. And let's we could have some text here. Your expense has been approved. And we can do our own CSS here. Maybe I want to override the CSS theme, which could have been customized, but let's say I'm just going to call it demo, and I want to make this huge. So I'm going to make it font size. Let's make it 32 pixels and color red, and I close it, and I could then use that style. I can do it here, I can do it here. As soon as I start typing, it finds that. So this is my message, and I could even maybe show information about that expense, since I get it in the preparation. So I can grab a show record, for example, and my source record will be that I got in the preparation. And here I can select which fields in the expense I want to show, or I can show the whole thing. So I'm going to show the whole thing. Let's say I show all that information. So far so good, but we're missing something here. Two changes complaining, because I've said that this email requires an input. So let's go back to the screen where we're doing this. We're doing this in the approve logic. We're calling the email. Notice it got renamed, and we're going to pass the expense ID, which we're getting in this screen. And now we're all set to go. So let's try it out. I'm going to publish. Okay, we're back in our application. Let's approve this expense. I'm going to the skiing expense. And here, I'm still logged in as a manager, so I'm going to approve. And when I approve, I change the status. I change the status of this expense. I could also, in my in here, instead of returning to the page, I could have gone back to my other screen, like the expenses screen. But let's go check out my email here. I'm going to go in there, my Hotmail email, and I have all the stuff redirected to my junk email. But here the expense has been approved. I have the OutSystems logo, and I have the expense the expense information here. Where do you set up email information? You usually do it here. If I click on this module management icon, this is a way that I can get to Service Center. You could also get to here by this URL, but it is here that I can go into administration and I can set things like email. So I have my SMTP server. I have the default email that shows where this is coming from. Also, it has an interesting feature that if during testing I want to block the emails not to go to the real people but to go to these test email addresses, I can do it here. Well, anyway, I wanted to thank you for watching me and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.